So I never thought that I would actually be this excited about doing a YouTube episode. But this particular topic, and guys, I have colored my hair. Hope y'all like it. If you don't, who gives a damn? This is me just kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing a little something new and different. And it is perfect for this particular episode because on this episode, I really want to share some things that I have learned about myself, which I've already kind of shared in a previous video that I did when I talked about the avoidant attachment style. I have taken the liberty to do a little bit of a deep dive. So I've taken some notes and I'm actually going to be reading from my notes. I've experienced this in real time, and I am going through the process of healing this in real time. And believe it or not, having a YouTube channel is one of the ways that I am healing myself, being a recovering avoidant person, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, recording a video and posting it on YouTube for someone like myself is not necessarily the most easiest thing to do, because posting means that I am opening myself up to the possibility of being rejected or not being accepted, not being liked, being ridiculed, being ignored. So many different things that emotionally I might experience. And since those emotions for me in the past have been a bit overwhelming, it would be the reason why I would not take that action. It would be the reason why I might record but not even post it on this platform, because let's think about it. There are so many hundreds of thousands of people that could come across your video. And not every person that comes across my content is going to agree with something that I might say. And I've experienced that with some of the content that I have posted. I have gotten comments of people who didn't have the nicest things to say about some of the things that I have shared. And so, but guess what? I survived that. It didn't kill me. I'm still here. I'm still showing up. And that's what's actually key in me expanding my capacity to be someone who's willing to experience it all. A lot of the times we just want to take the good, but baby, you got to take the bitter and the sweet. You got to be willing to experience the wholeness of life. The fullness of life requires that you open yourself up to the wide range of possibility. Okay? So there's uncertainty involved in just about everything that we do. There's a lot that we do now that we don't realize. We are actually living in the world of uncertainty. Even when you think there is certainty, something can happen clear out the blue that you never even expected by you just sitting in your home. We hear the stories on the news. Any of us who still watch the news, because I don't watch the news. But if you are alive, if you're breathing, if you are existing, you are willing to take the chance of anything that could possibly happen to happen. You are open to that when you are just living life. I want to talk to you about 8 reasons that I have identified that we actually avoid. And before I even get into that, I want to read to you what I have written about the reasons that we avoid. So avoidance is a learned behavioral pattern. It's a survival pattern that we learn from the experiences that we've had in our past. So just to give an example, think about when you're a kid and you've been given an assignment to learn to recite a poem. So you're supposed to memorize this poem, and then you're called up to the front of the class and you're supposed to read this poem. And say you're in class and there's the class clown who teases you because maybe you stumbled over some of the words or whatever the case may be, and the entire class laughs. Think about what you as a child may then believe about speaking in front of a class, especially if some adult doesn't come and encourage you to keep going. You might believe that it's dangerous for you to speak, that if you speak in front of a group of people that you're going to make a mistake and somebody is going to laugh or someone is going to reject you, and you experience that as a bad thing. Now, I'm not suggesting that that doesn't happen. Obviously, whenever we do anything in front of people, we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. But as a child, again, you don't know that nothing terrible has happened. That's just the risk that we take when we present ourselves in that very vulnerable way. And it means absolutely nothing. But to a child, it means I don't need to do that again. Behaviorally, what happens is we run, we make excuses, we hide, we refuse to move. All right, so let's get into the 8 reasons that I have identified that we actually avoid. And the number 1 reason is to protect ourselves. Think about it. If you go to do the thing, if you in the moment experience a emotion that is quite uncomfortable, you're going to pull yourself back so that you can get that relief. So you're protecting yourself. This is a learned protective behavior, and it's a nervous system's prediction based on past experience. So again, the last time you did the thing, whatever the thing is, the last time you did it, you didn't have the most pleasant experience. And so the nervous system says, hey, let's not do that again, okay? And so it's going to base any future encounters that are like that particular experience that you had. It's going to base whether or not you should do that on the past. All right. So some examples of how this might show up behaviorally is you avoiding dating again after you have had your heart broken. Another way, you might avoid speaking up after experiencing being criticized again in the past. Or you might avoid doing things like seeking out professional services, going to the doctor or going to a therapist because maybe you've experienced something negative or you know someone who has had a negative experience. And so to protect yourself, you will avoid doing those things. The underlying emotion you'll notice in all of these reasons is fear. So you're essentially avoiding fear. So the second reason we avoid is to escape discomfort. And the brain loves pleasure. So it's going to support you in avoiding any experience that's painful. And if you think about growth can feel uncomfortable because, again, you're starting to get into the unknown. And so if you are starting a business, learning a new skill, starting a new exercise routine, the brain sees that as an uncomfortable experience. And so it's not going to be in support of you doing the new thing. And so it's going to encourage you to avoid it. Now, the third reason that we avoid is because of shame. And essentially, when you feel ashamed, the belief is that there is something wrong with you. You might feel that you're inadequate. You don't feel like you're enough. You feel like you're too much. You might feel that you're weak or that you're a failure. And so you'll avoid taking the action because you believe that the failure would confirm what shame already believes. And this is why perfectionism is often rooted in shame. So a perfectionist wants everything to be perfect. They don't want things to go wrong because it's going to confirm the underlying shame that is actually being covered up by the perfection, okay? All right, number 4, the reason we avoid is because we want there to be certainty. We want things to be perfect because it eliminates any chance of anything going wrong. All right, so instead of taking the action, we overthink. We'll research, we'll plan, we'll wait. We tell ourselves, I'm just preparing. All right, so sometimes we actually are preparing, but sometimes we are postponing. And again, that's a way that we avoid. So the 5th reason we avoid is because we don't trust ourselves. And this ties back into feeling like you need for things to be certain, okay? If it's not certain, you don't trust that you can handle whatever experience you might have if you do the thing. This is different from lacking confidence. Confidence says, I don't know if I can. Self-trust says, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm willing to do it anyway. So it's like me being willing to post a video on YouTube. I have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. I don't know if anyone would even be willing to listen. I might get ridiculed, okay? I might get ignored altogether, but I'm willing to do it anyway. That's the price that I'm willing to pay, because I'm trusting myself to be able to handle whatever happens. So when self-trust is low, avoidance goes up, okay? You are increasing the likelihood that you will avoid if there is a low self-trust. All right, number 6, and we're almost there. This is 8 reasons why we avoid. The number 6th reason that I have identified that we avoid is because it gives us immediate relief. So if you don't take that step forward, you don't experience the fear. You lessen the chance that you might be rejected, or that you fail, or that you get disappointed, or your heart gets broken. So this is what makes avoidance addictive. Imagine you avoid making that phone call. Immediately, your anxiety drops. Your brain says, excellent strategy. The relief reinforces the avoidant behavior. Yes, there's a relief, and that relief reinforces the avoidance. And the problem is the anxiety does return. So you don't solve the problem. You still need to do the thing, or you still want to do the thing. And so if you get ready to take a step forward, guess what? That feeling still is going to rise, okay? Because you haven't taught yourself, or you haven't given yourself the experience of surviving that experience. And so the nervous system still has old, outdated information because you have not taught it anything different by going through and having that experience. So avoidance feels good in the moment. It's temporary relief, but then it charges interest, okay? Because if you notice, the more you hold yourself back from taking an action, the harder it becomes to actually do it, okay? The emotional part of that experience is louder. That's when I, describe it as being like this wall, this fear wall that you feel like you can't get around. And that's because you just allowed that emotion related to doing that thing, it has compounded. All right, so the 7th reason we avoid is because it became our identity. So at some point we stop saying, I avoid conflict, and we start to say, I'm just not confrontational. So you think that this is just who you are. You avoid conflict. I've always been this way. I've heard that said. I'm an introvert. Again, you're giving yourself an excuse for why you don't do the thing, that you don't show up in this way, that you say that you're an introvert. Behavior slowly becomes identity. And once something becomes identity, it is more difficult to clock. It is more difficult to question. It is more, you literally have a difficult time changing it because it's who you've identified yourself as being. All right, and the final reason that we avoid is because we mistake feelings for fact. I feel anxious becomes I feel scared. I feel anxious becomes this must be dangerous. I feel scared becomes I shouldn't do it. I feel uncertain becomes I need to wait. Feelings become instructions, but feelings are information, not always accurate predictions. So those are the 8 reasons that I have identified that we avoid. And there is one common thread that runs across all 8 of those reasons. We avoid because we believe avoidance will protect us from an experience we don't yet trust that we can handle. That experience might be rejection, disappointment, embarrassment, grief, conflict, failure, guilt, uncertainty, loss, or vulnerability, to name a few. We aren't usually avoiding the event. We are avoiding the experience we predict the event will create. So, again, this is something that is very near and dear to my heart because I've discovered that this is how I've been doing life. This is an identity that I have begun to dismantle by showing up in ways such as this to give myself a new experience of visibility because, again, in times past, I was afraid that I was going to be rejected, that people were not going to be willing to listen, that nobody really cared. But now I'm showing myself that none of that actually really matters. This is something that I want to do. I want to share. And so I'm going to do it anyway because I can handle whatever comes my way. If someone rejects, that's okay with me. Everybody does not have to watch my content. Everyone doesn't have to subscribe to my channel. No one has to comment. No one has to like my videos. But I'm going to do it anyway. Because how else am I going to get to those things if I'm not willing to have the experience of its opposite? Right? We've got to be willing to have the experience if we want to have the life of our desires. And if you're like me, you got into this manifestation space and you thought that you could just visualize, you could do affirmations, you can do the vision boards, and you can just sit somewhere and wait for your desires to arrive. But let me be the one to ruin that for you. You have to be willing to take action. And there's a lot of us that aren't taking the action that you get the inspiration to take because you're avoiding an emotion that you have not trusted yourself to feel fully. And so you avoid. And so you think your manifestations are not coming. They're not here, but they are. But life is waiting for you to move. And you're not going to take that action if you're not going to be willing to pay the price. So on my next episode, I'm going to talk to you about some of the ways that I am getting myself aligned with my desire. One of my desires is coaching. I am a certified life and wellness coach. I've held these certifications for almost 10 years. And I'm not going to say I've wasted my certifications because you better believe I've been doing the work on me. But I want to share my expertise with the world. But I've got to be willing to take the action to start the coaching practice little by little. That's one of my magic words. I don't just jump out here head first. I know I have to very incrementally but consistently be willing to put myself out here in this way so that you can get to know me, so that you know what I'm about, Here I am, world. And I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. If you stopped in to listen to this conversation, I appreciate you as always. Until next time, lovelies, be blessed.